What is going on? Now, this is like the eighth time I've restarted this video. I keep rambling in it. I'm trying not to ramble. I'm trying to keep it to 5 minutes. So, I think I told you guys previously that I've been pouring my own lures, and these are some of the ones I've done. This is just a small sample. I have probably 15 molds of baits that I do. Some are bought baits, which would be some of these. Some are handmade ones, which I did myself. These are copies of Zoom trick worms and cream worms. So to kind of some of them are kind of ugly looking. These I really did when I first started pouring. So I didn't know about sealing the molds right. So some of them became really bubbly. So if you look and see, they got kind of some bubbles in them. They still work, but they're just not pretty. I got better as I went along. Like see here, you can see the air holes in some of these. They're badly done. This is an extra box that I've done. But yeah, some of them, as I got better, like you can see here on these, I got better, poured much better. Very clean. This is my Ned rig here. It's a 3-inch Ned. It's called a Caterpillar. By Fusion X is the company that makes this mold here, this mold here. They make, that's their 4-inch stick baits. Stick X, I think it's called. They have a craw. They have quite a few. I have this one here. This is called their Stinger X. Obviously I made a few copies of it. I made my own mold eventually. And what you do is you use Plaster of Paris, which is very easy to get, cheap at a hardware store, probably 10-pound bag, less than $20. 2-to-1 with water. Use some old plastic like this here, and you kind of figure out. I would put water in, pour the water into a cup, figure out how much you're going to need, and that'll kind of give you an idea how much product you're going to need to pour over that to make that mold. And then you're going to need something to seal the mold with, which is I use Appliance Epoxy. It's probably the best thing I've used. I've tried Mod Podge, but it doesn't seem to seal as good as I like. And once you pour a few plastics, it kind of pulls the Mod Podge off of it. So I would suggest using Appliance Epoxy. You can get a can of it at a hardware store for dirt cheap, and it's the best way to go. It takes about an hour to make a mold for it to set. Once it's set, you can peel it out of the container you made. Then I put them in an oven at 350, and I heat it. 325 for about 30 minutes, and I take it out, let it cool down. And what that does, that just kind of allows it to suck some of the water out, and it bakes in the oven, kind of hardens the top of the mold, gives it a really nice clean look to it, and does draw some of the water out. Takes probably 24 hours to a couple days to get them completely dry. On these here, as you can see, I do the one side, but I don't seal the bottoms, so the bottoms are porous. So you make the molds that way, and it's a good way to recycle old plastics. Like I'm now, what I do is I take these plastics like these here, I'll use up. I'll stick them in a bucket in my trunk. Like if they're in my pocket, I take them out fishing, they get tore up, they go into a pocket. When I'm done, they go into a bucket in the car. Once I have enough baits to pour, I'll melt them down in a Pyrex cup in an old microwave and re-pour me some new baits. And like I said, I made probably about 15 molds. They're pretty fun to do. There's various molds you can make. Like I said, I've made everything of my own, from craws to copies of craws to baby brush hog style baits, worms, different size worms. I have 3-inch worms. I have some 3-inch sluggos. I've got my own Ned rigs I've made up. You can pretty much do your own. If you want to do grubs, you can do grubs and plastic worms and not crankbaits. Jeez, I almost said crankbaits. Crawbaits. Creature baits is what I meant to say, actually. And it goes from there. I mean, you're really your imagination is about the only thing that can hold you back. So if you want to design your own bait, you can take a couple plastics. What I do is a really good trick is that I made my own like 3-inch worms. What I did is I just cut them down, certain size plastic worms, and I melted the worms together. And when you do that, it gives you kind of a really nice designed worm that looks really good when you pour it. And like I have a 3-inch worm I throw that's kind of like it's a really super finesse worm. When when the bass aren't looking for something really big, they don't want to eat a 6-inch, I can throw my 3-inch, and lots of times it will drill me some fish. But again, I made it myself. And that's the great thing of it. There's nothing better than when you catch a fish on a lure that you made on your own. And this is a good way to do it. It's a good way of recycling plastics. If you're like me and you spent a lot of money on plastics, recycle them up. Your Cincos, you know how Cincos are. You tear them up. Most of these were Cincos. I think all these were Cincos. All these were old Cinco baits that I melted down and redid. You know, a lot of this green are green Cincos. And what you do, you melt it down and start over. And if you mess up, you just make another mold. That's the great thing about Plaster of Paris. It's so inexpensive that if you mess a mold up, you just go, okay, make another one. And let me tell you, I did. I made some molds in the beginning, like these molds here. These are probably not my best molds, and I'm going to redo them. I got in some new worms in. I'm probably going to redo these, and I'll melt these right back down. I don't, you know, you can cut these back down and remelt them. You know, if they're not done well, cut them up and remelt them and put them back in the mold. And you recycle them that way. So just an idea. Oh, here's my frogs here. Those are slot belly frog. You can pour your own frogs. That's another thing too. Soft plastic frogs. Anything you want to do, you can do. And I'm trying to cut this video short here so I don't go too far. I like to keep them in a 5-minute range. So, but yeah, look into it. Easy to do. Use it in a well-ventilated area when you pour. Make sure you got hot gloves by. Make sure you use a Pyrex cup. Don't use a knockoff cup. If you don't, that's a possibility they could crack. I had one blow up on me, and it exploded, and I had to clean it up. And if you've ever had glass and hot rubber together, once they dry, they're hard to get off of an area. So I really took a long time to get them done. But yeah, if you want to make your own baits, there you go. Very easy to do. If you screw up like these are here, I'm going to melt these back down and use them again. And if you're like me, you have a lot of extra baits, you bought a ton of baits that you're not using now, cut them up, melt them down. It's very easy to do. Plaster of Paris, some water, some epoxy paint, and you're good to go. You know, you can do whatever you want. And you don't have to spend a ton of money. You pour your own, you're recycling your baits, and, you know, if you spend, you know, $20 on some worms, like I bought 100 bag of worms, the 100 bag of worms will last me a long time because I'll definitely recycle them. So there you go. Let me know what you think.